Replacing Pierre-Paul, the nub, Robert Quinn. There is no doubt the Eagles need to upgrade their defensive end spot. No question about it, whether it's at the end of the year or at the trade deadline. But if you can't manufacture pressure because of your defensive coordinator, why go out and get anybody? Dallas still stinks. You're by doing King Dingbat here, and I hope everybody's having a great day. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're hanging in there. So there's no question about it. It is frustrating to see the Eagles only get 2 sacks in 2 games so far this season. And there's a lot of talk about the Eagles needing to add pass rush help. But all I can say is this. What good is pass rush help if your defensive coordinator doesn't know how to use them? Okay, doesn't know how to use them. And we're going to get into it in a second. But before we do that, if you're new to the channel and you like the content, make sure to hit that like button. More importantly, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of this action over here. Denzel Washington in the house. Yes, I look like him. And if you've been subscribed for a while, just double check. Double moonwalk check. Make sure you're still subscribed. Now, it is frustrating to see the Philadelphia Eagles go out there and only get 2 sacks, in 2 games. They had the 1 sack versus Detroit where Goff fumbled and Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham were able to get to it. And I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I only remember 2 Josh Sweat sacks. 1 was a penalty, so it didn't count. And then he got another one late. I don't think there was any other sacks. If I'm wrong, correct me. But if it's not 2, then it's 3 in 2 weeks. And it's just not good enough. It's just not good enough. And there's a lot of talk, that the Eagles may be interested in Jason Pierre-Paul, and he visited the Ravens, and there's other teams that he's talking to. One of them could be the Eagles. Let me remind you guys of something. Jason Pierre-Paul, Mr. Nub, he had 2.5 sacks last year. 2.5 sacks. He's 33 years old, I believe. So he had 2.5 sacks last year. He had a great career, great player, but how much does he have left? That's really the question you have to ask yourself. How much does he have left? And would going out and spending money on Jason Pierre-Paul solve the problem at defensive end? This is clearly something that you're going to have to do in the draft next year. It's something where I think one of your first round picks have to be Will Anderson. Now, get this, right? The Saints, Jameis Winston's playing with broken fractures in his back. I think he has 4 fractures in his back. Okay, they're 1-1. He's going to try to play through the pain and everything like that. Usually, when they get fractured backs, that doesn't go away. We saw what happens with Carson. They're going to shut Winston down at some point, and when that happens, that team's going to collapse. The Eagles could very well get a top 10 pick with the New Orleans Saints pick, because I think the Saints are not going to be as good as everybody tried to tell us they were. I don't even think they're a 500 team. So my thing is this. You obviously have to address defensive end in the draft next year. With Brandon Graham being older, I think it's something you have to do. You're not going to bring back Derek Barnett, especially now after a torn ACL. Will Anderson, I wish, right? We really need the Saints to collapse at this point for that. But that would be the dream come true. However, for this year, for the rest of this year, you might want to look for help, okay? And there are a few guys that we've talked about, like JPP before. I'm not big on JPP. Not because I don't like what he did. I loved him coming out of college. But I don't think a guy 33 years old that had 2.5 sacks last year comes in and makes that big of a difference. And here's the other problem. Here's the main issue. You brought Hassan Reddick in, a guy who had double-digit sacks on 2 different teams 2 years in a row. Comes to Philly, he's got 0 sacks. Okay, now for week 1, he rushed the pass. He went into pass coverage 19-point-something% of the time. Yeah, last game it wasn't that much. I think it's 9% this year total he's dropped into coverage, which is not bad. That's not bad. But he still has 0 sacks. I think they have to find a way to help Reddick, to help this defensive line generate pressure. And Jonathan Gannon, although I thought they did a good job on the defense as a whole on Monday night. They still need to find a way to get pressure with their front. And if you can't get pressure with your front, then you have to bring other players. You have to bring linebackers, bring safeties. You have to bring more guys than they can block. That's what you have to do if you can't get home, especially with your front four. His defense that he wants to run works really well when you can get pressure with your front four. They have not been able to do that. So they have to find a way to do it. They have to find a way to get Haason Reddick going. It's hard for me to believe that you got Hassan Reddick and he's got 0 sacks. He hasn't even really he came close one time to the quarterback. And he'll get his and they'll figure it out. But until you figure it out with Haason Reddick, I don't see the point in JPP. Because I'm not convinced he's going to come in and give you 5 sacks. If he gives me 2 sacks, I'd rather go elsewhere. So before we can worry about who we're going to trade for, bring in my opinion, the Eagles got to go out and get Haason Reddick going. That's first and foremost. You got to get Haason Reddick going. Got to get him to the quarterback. It has to happen. They've got to find a way to get it going. He should be our double-digit sack guy. You know, and if I'm going to play this game, if I'm going to play this game where I'm going to bring in a defensive end or I'm going to bring in another pass rusher, then I'm going to, like I said in a previous video, I'm going to aim big. I'm going to aim big. I'm going after Robert Quinn Jr. Or why I always say Robert Quinn Jr. I don't know why I call him Jr., but Robert Quinn, right? Now, Robert Quinn's 32 years old, I believe himself. So he's old too. He's about 6'4", 245 pounds. He's got 3 solo tackles this year, 1 sack. So he's already had 4 tackles, 4 tackles and 1 sack. So he's already got a sack for a bad Chicago Bears team. And the Bears, I believe, will continue to lose. And when they continue to lose, when we get closer to the trade deadline, he's the perfect guy to get shopped and shipped somewhere else. I would definitely bring him in if I could. I would much rather the Eagles trade for Robert Quinn than bring in JPP. I've said this in previous videos. I'm going to say it now. You probably can do it for a mid-round pick. I don't think it would cost you a lot because of his age. Now, his salary cap's like $12.5 million. So I don't know how much would transfer from the Bears to the Eagles. I think as you get closer to the trade deadline, half of that would be eaten up by the Bears. So you'd have to wait a little bit. And the Bears probably want to be out of it. But he's got to be your number 1 target if you're going to go after another pass rusher. Okay, but if you bring him in, are you going to have the same problem you have with Haason Reddick? Before I go out and I get another defensive end, whether it's JPP or somebody else, before I go and do that, I'm going to figure out what I'm doing with the guys I have. Hassan Reddick is good. Hassan Reddick can rush the passer. But the way the Eagles have gone these last 2 weeks, he hasn't sniffed it. And I think part of it is the way they rush. I think it's the way they line up. I think it's the way they rush. You don't see very many stunts or anything like that. And then they often are not bringing enough pressure. When the Eagles blitz, they're really good. When you man up and you let those corners press and you bring heat, people have a hard time with the Eagles. You got 3 really good corners. And you got guys at linebacker that can blitz. And I think the Eagles need to do more of it. I think Gannon needs to do more. Every time he does it, teams have trouble. They have a lot of trouble. He needs to do it more. And I think that will help create things for Haason Reddick. But before I go out and I get Robert Quinn or I get Jason Pierre-Paul, I need my defensive coordinator to get Haason Reddick going. Help him get Haason Reddick going. Help generate pressure. I think that the Eagles, there's no reason why the Eagles this game should not sack Carson Wentz at least 4 times. Really, I'm dead serious. There should be at least 4 sacks. 1 should be a fumble recovery for the Eagles, and 1 should lead to an interception. I want 4 sacks this week. I want 2 turnovers, 1 fumble, 1 interception. If I get that from this defensive line, I'll be very happy. But I really think that you got to find a way to get Hassan Reddick going. And I think for the most part, he was dropping in coverage a little bit against Minnesota. I have to watch the all 22, but I think they used him much better. I think he started to get close in that 4th quarter. There was one time where he came around the edge, he kind of tripped. Otherwise, he would have had a sack. And I think he'll get going. But when when we hear all the talk about JPP or anybody like that, JPP is not going to be your savior. Robert Quinn could help you, but it's the same situation of having Reddick. You have to be able to get him to get pressure, and you're going to have to use him the right way. The Eagles have to use Haason Reddick better. They have to get him going. Reddick's got to get going. And if they do that, and they start generating pressure, then I'll say this. Okay, you want to bring JPP in as a rotational player to help out? Fine. You want to go out and make a splash and get Robert Quinn? Fine. And you got to remember this too. There are other players out there that we're not even thinking of. And this is usually Howie Roseman's MO. You pick up, they always trade for somebody we didn't see coming. So as teams lose and other teams are starting to get out of it, there are going to be sellers who are going to want to sell pass rushers and get them off their books. And we just got to stay patient with it. So what I'm saying basically is, before we go out and get JPP or try to get Quinn, we've got to figure out the issues that we have getting Hassan Reddick going and getting that defensive line going. When we figure those things out, then we can worry about adding guys. Because if you added somebody and you still have the same problems, nothing's going to change. So I want to see the Eagles actually go out and actually get Hassan Reddick going. Jonathan Gannon needs to show me he can scheme his guys to get pressure. You know, I didn't like Jim Schwartz's scheme, but he could always find a way to get his defensive line going. Now I need to see that from Jonathan Gannon. Just a quick reminder, I will be streaming tonight's game. Look for that later and possibly another video throughout the day. With that said, take care. Talk to you later. Of course, don't be a dingbat. Remember, it's Howie Vision. We're all just living in it. I really like the Eagles' position with the New Orleans Saints draft pick. I really do, because Winston's got 4 fractures in his back. I'm telling you, he'll play a little bit, and they'll shut him down at some point, and that'll be all she wrote. And you know what? We're owed. We're owed. We had Miami was 1-7 last year. We had their first round pick. They go on like a 8-game winning streak or something like that. It was ridiculous. That should never happen. Should never happen. So to me, if things are fair and things balance out, then we should get a top 3 pick by the Saints, which will give us the best pass rusher in the draft, Will Anderson Jr. most likely. So that's what I'm wanting. That's what I'm hoping. And hey, Saints, shut him down. Shut Jameis Winston down. Denzel Washington out.